Think of an activity you've done. It could be dance, running, exercise. To do that activity well, posture is important, and it's the same for our horses. I'm here with Noelle, and in this video we're going to talk about movement of the horse and why we pay so much attention to movement and how the horse carries themselves. And we're going to be talking kind of big picture, but also specifically along the top line and why the horse's head and neck kind of gets so much attention. So the first thing to understand is that when we ride the horse, we're asking more of them than if they were just wandering around their field. So in order for the horse to be able to carry themselves well, to be able to move and remain in balance, and to avoid any kind of injuries, they need to be able to learn to adopt a weight-bearing posture when we're riding them. So the most important component of this is lifting the back. Now, one of the most eye-opening experiences that I had to understand this was when I actually got to experience what it felt like. So this is an exercise you can easily do with a friend, and all you're going to do is get down on your hands and your knees and start with having a hollow or an arched back posture. So you're going to drop your back and have your friend push. And then feel the difference when you lift your back, you engage what would be the equivalent of the horse's sling mechanism. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But when you engage and you lift your back and then have your friend push again, and feel the difference. So it really helps to kind of understand from more of that kinesthetic and feeling way of learning why this is so important for the horse. So the basic idea is that the horse needs to be able to lift their back in order to bear weight. But if you think about the movement of the horse coming in kind of three parts. So they have to lift their back, they need to stretch forward and down with their neck, and they also need to reach well underneath of themselves with their hind leg in order to push off the ground and to propel themselves forward. So these three things we can work on in individual different responses, but they kind of come together in a big picture. So we'll start with kind of, if you watch a horse that's moving very hollow, so a horse that is tense in his back, that has a dropped back, he'll usually have his neck lifted high. As he takes a step, each step, his poll will be coming up with each step because his back is tight. And a lot of times his hind legs will be kind of out behind him. So instead of stepping well underneath of his body and stepping under his center of mass, instead his legs are not tracking, which means that when he steps, instead of stepping into the print of where the front leg has just left the ground, it's stepping behind that. But when we have a horse that is moving well, we'll see that their neck is reaching forward and down. So as they're moving, their poll is reaching slightly forward and down with each step. Also, their back is lifted, and their hind leg then has the room to come underneath of themselves. So they're stepping well under, they're either tracking where they're stepping in the print of that front leg, or they're stepping slightly in front of that print in order to push off the ground and propel themselves forward. So if we take a look on Noelle at what some of this kind of looks like standing, you can also begin to experience this and feel it by having a friend do this as you're sitting on your horse. Just make sure that you do it first without a rider on so that you can see how your horse responds. But if I come to the other side here and I just kind of tickle her belly a little bit, you can see her back start to come up. In some horses, this is going to be a lot more obvious. On Noelle, it's actually not as super obvious as it can be on some horses. And there she's just at a fly, so anytime you're doing something like this, you want to make sure that you're more towards the front of the body and close to the horse so you're in a safe spot. But if you look right here, you can see that as I kind of scratch the underneath of her belly with my hands, it's causing her to engage that sling mechanism, which are the muscles around and kind of underneath the rib cage, so that she lifts, and you see that lifting in her back. Now the other way that we could trigger a slight lifting in the back is you'll notice if we have if we see the difference, let me step her up here again. If I lift her head, as I artificially kind of lift her head here, you can see her back drops. But as I encourage her to stretch down, you can see as she does that, it then allows the back to come back up slightly. And this is an interesting exercise to do with your horse because you'll notice varying amounts of movement from different horses as you do these. And the other way that we can start to get the back lift, kind of the third part of this picture, is if I come here and I tickle her along her tail as her pelvis kind of tucks more under her and the angle of the pelvis closes this way, you can see that that also starts to lift her back. So when we're actually riding and we're in movement, these three things happen together. They kind of happen in unison. But again, what we can do is we start to train the responses individually, and as the training level of the horse progresses, the more that these elements will come together and the horse will have that increased tone of being able to carry himself with more and more balance and being able to hold the lifting of the back, the forward stretch down with the neck, and that far reaching under leg to give him more of the impulsion. Now there's a lot of different theories out there for the best way to train a horse to get them more supple, get them carrying themselves better, and to get them adapting more of this weight-bearing posture. The way that I train this is I start with teaching the horse just to soften in response to rein contact. So if you have a young horse or an unschooled horse, when you first start taking the rein contact, depending on how you take that contact and on the horse's prior experience, you'll either have the response that they soften and they kind of move towards the pressure, or they brace and they push against it. So the first response that I like to train is that when I take the rein pressure, the horse softens. So instead of feeling a brace against me, I just feel that the horse is soft and I'm able to direct them really at any direction, whether it's directing them a little bit to the side, asking them to lower their head, asking them to move their feet back. They just have that softness and they're not bracing in response to that contact. And then the next stage of training is teaching the horse to lower and stretch down with their neck in response to the rein pressure in the saddle. So when I'm in the saddle and I take the contact with the rein, I want the horse to learn to stretch down. So again, with a young or a green horse, what this looks like is taking the rein pressure, releasing it, and eventually allowing that horse to be able to move where they can walk, trot, and canter, and they can do basic figures and patterns on a loose rein, maintaining that stretch. So one of the kind of horseman's terms is talking about the stretch. But when we talk about the stretch, it's really just this idea that the horse is stretching forward and down with the neck, and that forward and down movement, their back is relaxed, and they're moving and swinging nicely through their body. So there's not a lot of the horse necessarily holding the back lift, or we're not talking about collection in this case, but we're just talking about getting suppleness, relaxation, and nice forward movement. So that's kind of the second stage that I train in. So the first one is just getting that softening to the bit pressure. The second one is teaching the horse to respond to the contact from the saddle with a stretch down, and then be able to maintain that movement so they can work on a loose rein, maintaining that stretch forward and down with the neck. Now, when we're talking about this, it's just an important little point that when the horse is moving, the pole should be the highest point. So stretching forward and down with the neck, with the pole the highest point, is a different pattern of moving than if we were putting a horse what's called behind the bit. So if we take rein pressure in a way that we're releasing when the horse brings his nose back towards his chest, then what can happen is we'll see one of the first cervical vertebrae becoming the highest point. And that's the kind of movement pattern that we don't want to have. So the idea is that it doesn't matter if the nose is poked out. We're not talking about training any kind of a headset here, but we're just getting the horse to get that reach forward with the neck so that we can have the soft back and that nice forward movement. And then the next stage from here is beginning to strengthen the hind legs and beginning to get more impulsion and push from the hind leg, as well as the horse getting stronger through the sling mechanism that they can actually hold and hold that lifted back. So this is where, as we're kind of working up that classical training scale, we start to use exercises like doing shoulder forward, doing shoulder in, haunches in. We start incorporating the lateral work. We start incorporating smaller circles, and we use the different figures and exercises to get the horse to begin shifting more weight back. But as most riders, we don't even have to worry about thinking about collection or working towards those higher level movements from the horse until we just get the relaxation and that nice forward movement. Now I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me what could improve in your horse's posture and movement. If you're watching this anywhere besides horseclass.com, go there for the best conversation and hundreds more free videos like this one. Also, we have premium courses to help you find the joy in your riding and connect with your horse.